Admit on.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, guys. Let's share our screen.
Of course, it's something not working. Okay. So I think we can start. And thank you everybody for joining us. This is, I am so proud. This is our first online event. And this is the Eospine Youth Club. This club, just for those who doesn't know the club, has been founded just a few months ago. And thanks to the efforts of every single members, I have to say, it has been growing and actually include people from all over the world, more than 20 countries all over the world. So welcome to this scientific writing webinar. I am really eager to listen to our speakers. We have an high-level speakers today. And please remember to join us on our social media platforms and follow us on YouTube and my.io. So thank you. I think we can start.
All right. So hi, I'm Taarini Johri, an Eospine Youth Club member from India. I'm happy to introduce our first speaker, as well as the chairperson of the Eospine International Board, Dr. Falavigna, who is also a very well-known figure in spine surgery and research. He is from Brazil and is the first Brazilian to receive the prestigious International Lifetime Recognition Award from the American Association of Neurological Surgeons for advancing the field of neurosurgery in his hometown as well as globally. He has actively pushed for academics and research in the Latin American region. We also recently had the honor to interview him in our Expert Insight interview. So there was this one section I liked the most, which was on leadership, which he said that the leadership is a lifestyle and it means to create new leaders and not followers. So he will now talk about how to write a paper, and afterwards we have a few minutes for some questions. So please feel free to put your burning questions in the chat box. I think this is a brilliant opportunity to clear your doubts directly with the expert. Thank you.
We can't hear you, Asdrubal.
Okay, so thank you for the nice presentation. I'm happy to be here. So my name is Asdrubal Falavigna. I'm a neurosurgeon from Brazil. What I most like to present is about research. So I have, in my lifetime, I have entirely correlate with research. So the next is I have nothing to disclose. I want to present a brief comments about education research and then how to do the grammar and the style of manuscript and then the structure of the manuscript. So first of all, I have some issues here, but I can. I want to congratulate you on the interesting topic selected because in my point of view, research is what drives the knowledge forward. We need to keep always investigating. We need to keep always not stop questioning. That is crucial for we to have a nice lifestyle and a better professional life. EO Foundation knows how vital is education research. In order to be famous like Juan, we need to publish books and work on the EOPeer platform. So I ask you to go to EOPeer platform and see the different models that we created over there. And take attention on manuscript maker, That is what I'm gonna speak today. So manuscript maker, we perform a nice and elegant way to write your manuscript, to write your next paper. And it's just to look and typing your entire paper. Once you start with introduction, the manuscript maker gonna tell you what to introduce in that part. So it's become really easy to perform the writing manuscript using the manuscript maker. So the present slide shows all the steps of research from idea to publication. So publication is always necessary when you finish your research. So research never finished unless published. All the research need to be published. And the participants always ask me if they have a negative results, how gonna happen? Doesn't matter independently if the result is positive or negative. You always need to publish because otherwise you're gonna have a publication bias every time that you're gonna perform a systematic review or a meta-analysis. Regarding to this topic, I have 2 publications about the basic steps to writing a paper, and that was 1 article. And last year, I published a book section on writing a scientific article. So I can share with the attendees right after I finish my presentation, so then you can have all the presentation. Those articles is where I took all the information to this lecture. So about grammar and style of scientific manuscript, the best communication is performed by clear, objective, and concise and simple language. So always keep it simple. The paragraphs have better readability when they are short and presented with a chronological sequence, and always focus one idea per paragraph. Don't mix up information on the same paragraph. The keep consistency, it's very important. Once you start using one term, keep using that term in your article. That is one common mistake, that once I start using non-surgical things, and then I change to conservative treatment. No, always keep the same term in all your article. I usually use the passive voice for material and methods. Otherwise, I use active voice. And the verb tenses is the past tense on the methods and results. Otherwise, is the present tense. That is some tips and tricks that usually we need to clear out at the beginning. How to improve readability. One thing is important. There are some words that we need to avoid during our writing. So I have 2 columns. One column is the words to avoid. The other column is which word we prefer to use in our manuscript. So always simplify your language. Doesn't matter if you work with Apple or Windows. I use Word in Apple, so I have the Flash Kincaid grade ability to read my readability. So once I finish my paper, I go to the Word, I just click on the Tools button, select the spelling and grammar, and editor. Then I select the test that I want to analyze, and in the end, you're gonna have the reliability statistics. So this is one way for you to understand if your article is have a good grade of readability or not. The other thing is the structure of the scientific manuscript. I use the IMRAND. IMRAND is the acronym for Introduction, Methods, Results, and Discussion. So every time that I work with introduction, and now you have to remember that introduction is the why, method is how, results is what, and the discussion is so what. Why is important for me to read all your paper and have the credibility on your paper. So always have introduction, why, methods is how, results is what, and the discussion is so what. So why this is important for me? I know that all the papers comes first with title, abstract, introduction, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. But that is not the right order that we write. The right order that I use is even before starting the research, I have already the introduction and the discussion. 80% of discussion is already wrote down there, because I need that in order to send my research to the ethics committee. So I have already the introduction and discussion. During the research, when I start the research, I have all the methodology and the results. And the last thing that I'm gonna write is the title, the conclusion, and abstract. Just give some tips and tricks in some of this structure of manuscript. Introduction, I always use the 3 rules for introduction, 3 paragraphs. I always have all the introduction in 3 paragraphs. Usually introduction is not more than 1 page. For me, the introduction should be like half a page. The first paragraph have all the general background that answer what is happening in the world. So it's like a literature update from the last 5 years. Then the second paragraph is why I'm performing this research study. What is the specific problem? What's the reason that I'm doing this work? And the third paragraph is how is the objectives and the methodology used, the clinical question, and how I'm gonna answer that clinical question. So 1, 2, 3, I have the introduction. Almost, this takes like half a page, not more than 1 page, absolutely. Just for example, I have this introduction from odontoid fractures. So always 3 paragraphs. The first one, what? The second, why I'm doing this research study. And the third one is how. I wanna answer the research questions. The second one is the methodology. Methodology defines how my research was carried out, as well the credibility and reproducibility of the study. That is the only section, remember, is the only section that never the editor wanna ask you to reduce, because you need to describe from A to Z everything that happens in your research, how you did your research. So to allow all the reproducibility, the information should follow a chronological sequence. Never write results or never discuss inside this section. It's just methodology. So sometimes this is like 3 pages, 4 pages, doesn't matter, but you have the description, entire description of everything that happens during the methodology, following a chronological sequence. Again, I took the same example, so I always break up in subsections to make easier to the reviewer and the reader to understand my methodology. If I have some classification, I usually use like a drawing to show the classification. You need to have this like as always to follow. The methodology needs to be well seen and well understood by all the reviewers and the readers. So this is the way, subsections. If I have some classification, I have the picture, I have everything set. It's just you take a look and you're gonna find. Never take like the review to find where you have your ethics committee approval. No, already have everything in subsection. Sometimes the study is very complex. I show the timeline of the study, so it's easier for the review to understand what's happened before the intervention, before the surgery, how was analyzed the patient after surgery in day 1, day 30, 1 year after. So it's very easy for them to understand. The following section is the results. The findings of the study are placed in the results section. I like to follow all the chronological order or the subsections that I present on the method section. So everything is setting up according with the methodology. One thing that's important, I never write too much on results. I usually use a lot the tables and the figures. So I check the maximum amount allowed in every journal of the amount of tables and figures, and I use the maximum amount always. So usually I have the main way to present all the results is through the tables and figures. The tables and figures need to be self-explanatory, simple, concise, and objective. I avoid using too much information, and the written part of the results usually is the things, the results that I want to highlight. And always make sure to reference the results in the test, the tables and the figures in the test. This is one example of tables and figures. And I just add this slide because I usually, when I'm seeing many papers for review, if I see some nice table, different table that I see that is so clear for me, the information, I usually copy and paste that table into my computer, and maybe in my next study, I'm gonna use something similar from that table. So usually when you see things that are beautiful, that call your attention, that is important, keep it in one computer and then use that table or that figure similar in your next paper. The interpretation of the results and the comparative analysis are performed in the discussion section. So I use the same subsections that I use on methodology and the results. By doing that, I avoid losing the focus on the study. Usually, the problem that I see on discussion is the authors, they miss the focus, they miss the goal of the study. So they start writing things that are not studied on the research. So I summarize all the key findings, and the discussion for me is quite simple to present. I have many paragraphs. The first paragraph, I present the most important results. The following 3 to 5 paragraphs is the interpretation of my results and the explanation of the concordance or the difference of the results from the literature. I compare my results with the literature. It's 3 to 5, not more than that. The second last paragraphs present the strength and limitation of my results. And the last one show the future implications of my results and what's going to be the next paper or the next study that those authors, the group, the team, are going to follow. So this is, again, the same example of the same study, type 2 fracture. So I have the discussion, the subsections. I have the interpretation from my results and the literature. The penultimate paragraph is study limitation and the strength of the study. Conclusion usually summarize the content and the purpose of the study is where the answer of the clinical question is highlighted, is the conclusion. Never make the conclusion as part of introduction and results. No, you have to conclude something. So you have the clinical question. The conclusion comes the answer of the clinical question. There is a need to have a concordance between the question and the conclusion. And sometimes you see different conclusions that was not answering the clinical question. So always keep the concordance about the reference that being. Usually the paper is 30-35 reference that you're gonna use. Always you have to declare all the conflict of interest of all the authors need to be declared. The abstract is the second part of the paper that is read, and it is essential to have the key points. So usually follows the AMRAT acronyms. We have the objective, the introduction that comes together with the objective, the methods, results, and discussion. Usually I write more in the methods and the results part of the abstract. It's about 40% each one of them. So now comes the last but not the least, the title. Title is the first part of the article that all the readers are gonna read. So it's very important that the title needs to be appealing. So there is some words that is like a magic word that you have to use, like prospective study, randomized study, blinded study. There are some magic words that need to be on the articles, and some abbreviations and words that never need to be on the title, like contribution of the study of influence of course that is about the study. You don't need to add some words that there's no means on that word. So authorship is very important to have all the authors. Author needs to be included, and the author needs to understand that all of them are accountable for all aspects of the work. The author is the person who conceive, acquire, and analyze the data. Sometimes we see some ghost authors that is someone that no one knows and is there and is on the list of the authors. Sometimes we see some gift authors that usually is the chairman. Oh, I need to have my chairman in my paper. Why? What he did on that research? Nothing. So if they need to be on the list of the authors, you need to include them in some task of the research. So then it's going to be easy to have the authors. One thing that is like the key message for you is now. Always, before you start the research, before planning this research, before sending it to the ethics committee, like have all the team on the table and define who gonna be the authors and who gonna be a knowledge in this study. How many papers are gonna publish? 2. So who gonna be the authors on the first one? Who gonna be the authors on the second? From the beginning, from the word go, you need to decide this. Otherwise, you're gonna lose friends because everybody has the perception that they're gonna be the authors, but someone usually just allowing you to get into his lab. So he's not the author. You're gonna say, okay, thank you for Mr. John to allow us to get in his lab and use all the materials, this and that, but this needs to be defined at the beginning. So keep it simple for surgeons. To write a good manuscript is not difficult, but at the same time, it's not easy. Just you need to keep writing. So the first manuscript that I'm gonna write maybe is not the best one. The second will become the best one. The third one, you're gonna be excellent. So thank you for the invitation and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Falavigna. That was a great all-inclusive talk. So we do have a few questions in the chat. One is, when is it best to discuss the limitations of a study? Is it better to address them in the discussion section, or to keep them as separate heading?
Always I use the one heading just for, I start with strength and limitation. Never start with something negative. Always start with positive. Always say, no, my paper is very excellent because I have the number of subjects is high, is a prospective study, this. And then you say, okay, but I have some limitations. You have to understand that all study has limitations. There is no 100% perfect study, and everybody knows that. So everybody knows that the paragraph of study limitation need to be in all study. And you need to be transparent and honest to have written all the limitations, because then I know that you are aware of those limitations, and then you concluded being aware of those limitations. Otherwise, I say, okay, he concluded these things, but he didn't know all the limitations of the study. So you always need to declare all the limitations. That's very important. If it's not on the last one, is on the penultimate paragraph. If you're gonna write the future perspective of the studies, that's gonna be my last one paragraph. Otherwise, strength and limitation are gonna be the last one. But I always have as subsection because it's very important.
Great. And the other question is, how important is it to have good bibliography? Is there any bias in the choice of articles that are to be cited?
You have to take in the introduction, you have 80% of all reference going to be on introduction. And more in the introduction is going to be on the first paragraph that tell you what is happening on the world. And the reference must be like in the last 5 years publication. We never use, usually we don't use like 10 years article to show why I'm doing this research today. So we need to have an update reference. And if you have your publication on that topic, you need to add that publication also, because it's important for them to understand that you are a research that have a long history on that topic. So this play very well when the editor and the review, like Juan, that is the editor of Global Spine Journal, that is the journal of EOSpine, he's gonna say, okay, this researcher has experience on that topic because he has a lot of publication that's very good. It's not biased.
All right, thank you so much, sir, for the amazing talk. Now over to Jan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Juan Silva. I'm a spine surgeon from Salvador, Brazil, and I'm here to welcome Dr. Juan Emmerich. Dr. Emmerich is a chairperson elect for AO Spine International Board, and following a successful 4-year term as chairperson of AO Spine Latin America, he's currently working at the Department of Neurosurgery in Hospital de Niños de la Plata and Hospital Español de la Plata in Argentina. And following his training in neurosurgery, he completed his pediatric neurosurgery training at Hospital de Niños de la Plata and subsequently pursued a fellowship in pediatric neurosurgery at Virgen del Rocho University Hospitals in Spain. So with a keen interest in leadership, faculty development, and personal growth, Dr. Emmerich has focused on enhancing soft skills among AO members and other educational organizations. As someone who speaks 4 languages, I think he is really a good person for pushing up us young spine surgeons from all different parts of the world. So I'm particularly glad to welcome Dr. Juan Emmerich on our webinar to talk about how to choose a journal.
Thank you so much, Jean, for this kind invitation, and thank you everybody for having me here. It's a truly honor, and congratulations to all of you for this wonderful initiative. Thank you so much, Gisberto, Franziska, Taarini, Jan, and the entire group for having me here. Well, after Asdrubal presentation, my job will be very easy because he gave to us a really good introduction how to write a paper. So I have the hard task, sorry, to choose the right journal for that paper that Asdrubal already showed you to us. So these are my disclosure. I don't have any conflict of interest on my academic presentation. However, be aware that I am one of the editors of the Global Spine Journal. I hope this is not a problem, but sometimes could be a bias. So please be aware about that information during my presentation. So we have four main objectives for these presentations. First of all, we're going to try to identify the importance of choosing the right journal and how tricky this could be. Later, we're going to talk a little bit about what make a reputation and what is the impact factor of a journal. Later, talk a little bit about open versus closed journal because it's extremely important, and give you some reasons for why the editors sometimes reject papers that I believe could be extremely helpful for all of you. So one of the probably tough first question that we have is to which paper we're going to send our work. It's important to understand, first of all, that most of the journals, almost every journal, have a clear scope, focus, and target audience. And that is extremely important to keep in our mind, because sometimes we want to say a research paper to an operative surgical journal, and that is not the right paper. Or sometimes we want to bring tips and tricks for treat one particular tumor in a research journal. Something that we need to identify from the beginning is the focus of that journal and which kind of content they want to cover. Then another important issue, especially for you, for a lot of you that probably are trying to publish the first paper, most of the journal nowadays don't accept case report. That in the past was something very frequent, but mostly of the top tier papers don't accept anymore case report and try to avoid small series or very small retrospective studies. Most of all, try to look for prospective studies and meta-analysis. So that is important to keep in mind. And you need to pay attention again, and this is very clear in most of the journals, if they are looking for clinical studies, experimental studies, or that journal cover both studies. Another important issue as well is because this is a worldwide audience, which will be the target audience of that journal. If Gisberto wants to present some particular pathology that is very frequent in one part of Italy, perhaps make a lot of sense go to a national journal or even a local journal instead of a global journal that probably are not looking for this kind. And it's the opposite in the other way. If Franziska wants to bring us a comparison between the different trainings worldwide, make a lot of sense go to a global journal instead of a national local. And remember, of course, global journal looks more fancy, but not necessarily are best that local or regional journals, especially, like I already told you, for one very local needs. Again, think not only in the scope, but which will be the target audience of that journal in particular. For instance, spine journals mostly are read by spine surgeons or researchers in spine surgeons, but not too much for clinical practitioners or economic and health policy decision. So it's important that you remember what kind of person do you believe that will be the ideal receipt of your knowledge that you are preparing? Again, nowadays that we have plenty of journals, there are someone who are may focus especially in surgeons, another in researchers, others in educators, another in policymakers. That is important. And now it's not a big issue because mostly of us are already training both neuro, ortho, or spine, but think that you want to publish something that could be related with the spine, but you are looking to have a big impact in a more broad audience, probably you need to move to a general medicine. For instance, if you want to talk about management of acute spinal cord injury for the first steps of the treatment, probably you need to look for a different journal that have a big, broader audience, so you could have more information. The other big issue, it's about reputation, and especially something that is called impact or impact factor of a journal. And this is something that is a little bit tricky, especially in the last couple of years. Because, of course, if you publish, let's say, in Nature or New England Medicine of Journal, it's perceived like the quality of your work, it's more important. High impact journals can give more visibility and credibility of your work. And of course, usually have a more influence, significant influence, in research, clinical practice, and even in systematic review. So at the beginning, make a lot of sense, looks for a high impact journal. However, I am not so sure how many of you really understand what is an impact factor and how it's calculated, because if you really understand, could be a little bit disappointed how important is this measure, but what are really measuring. Journal input, there are different of there, but mostly of them is a metric that what is doing is a relation between a number of seats that a particular journal citation or particular journal have for the number of papers they are publishing in a very particular period of time. For instance, probably the most famous of these metrics is the journal impact factor that you need to understand is made by a company that is called Clarivate Analytics. This is a private company that it's looking for a lot of really good rules, but again, this is not a universal factor. This is one of them. That is the reason I have a trademark. This is called journal impact factor. And here you have the formula that they use. They use the citations that one particular journal have, for instance, to calculate the 2022 journal impact factor that will be published in 2023. Start to understand how crazy this could be. You need to have all the citations that that paper have in 2022, but only of the papers that were published in 2020 and 2021. And then they divide this for the number of articles that were published over there. Again, the 2023 impact factor will be calculated about all the citations that that paper or that journal have in 2022, but only of the articles that were published in 2020 and 2021. If that would publish articles from 2020, 2019, doesn't count. And that is, for someone of you who want to have more information, I encourage to go to this website. They have all the information of how they do it. But it's important to understand, because this is not perfect, okay? It's easy, of course, give a very quick comparison between different journals. It's people like rankings. We want to know who is the #1 tennis player, who are in the top 10. So it's easy because we love these numbers, but could be ambitious. And one of your colleagues already asked about self-citation by a journal. It's a temptation, you know. If I am the editor of one journal, I could ask to the authors, or I encourage to the authors to cite more papers from my own journal, and this could be a little bit tricky. But especially because all of us, or most of us, are spine surgeons, we need to understand that the impact factor is not an homogeneous number. For instance, large fields like cancer or diabetes, or especially if we are talking about really fancy new technology, could IA or could be vaccines during the pandemic, of course, had a much higher impact factor than C1, C2 dislocation. There are really good journals in a smaller field of knowledge that tend to have a lower impact factor. And this could be a problem because even for editors, if you bring a really good paper, but it's not a really hot topic, I could have a lot of doubts to publish that kind of papers. And again, you need to pay extra attention. Let me put a couple of examples so you could understand what I try to say. These are the top tier of all medicine journals worldwide. Here you have the only number you see, the impact factor. Here are the top 10. Cancer Journal for Clinicians. This is the number 1, Lancet, New England Medicine Journal. But let's go to the right to go a little bit deep dive. What happened? If you see the number of citations these papers have, these journals have, is absolutely different. The number 1 have around 70,000. Looks, this number are absolutely crazy. Later I'm going to show you the numbers from the spine field. But look, 70,000. But the number 3 have 310,000, have 5 times more. But the big difference, the number of papers this journal published during that period of time. They published only 100 papers, and they published 2,000 papers. So again, if you keep very low the number of papers you publish, your impact factor could have a bigger trend. And again, of course, this is just a number. For instance, looks spine journals. These are the top 17. The number 1 nowadays is Spine Journal, who have around 6,500. So sorry. But the number 3, that is Spine, have almost 9,000. And the number 2 have only 900. But again, it's related with the amount of papers they publish. Again, this is only to keep in mind because when you start to publish, you will look so crazy for the impact factor, and be aware that it's a number, but it's not the most important. Something that is really important, and we are close to the end, especially in this field that is a worldwide audience, is something that are open access journal. And this is something really nice because are trying to give more opportunities to all of us, especially who lives in third world countries, that we don't have a lot of resources to have subscription for us individual or our institutions to all of the journals. And this is really nice because allows to give access to a wider audience, and giving more opportunities to all of us. Do you know how many times we are trying to prepare a lecture and we only have access to the abstract, and that could be extremely disappointing for us? In the other hand, open journals give opportunity to all. And there are 3 different kinds of open journal. This is the most traditional, that is called golden open journal routes, that are journals who are open journals, open access to everybody. Then you have something that is called green routes, that is a traditional journal that allow to the authors to put their paper in a repository where all other persons can download. Or there are another option that is a little bit more expensive. You go to a traditional journal and you pay an extra fee, so that particular paper go to open access to all of them. It's important to understand, and I encourage all of you to try to give direct by an open access journal, or try to look for a way, because it's the best way to give our knowledge or our research to a worldwide audience, like a lot of us. So it's important to understand that open access is a little bit tricky because it's a really challenge to be sure that this kind of journals could be sustainable. Is a big problem. For instance, AO Spine give a lot of money to the Global Spine Journal to keep working like this way, because take a lot of money to have a journal, and we are giving this, let's say, for free to a lot of people so they can post here. And a big issue with the with the current open access journal is try to keep the level. You can see there are a lot of predatory journals. Probably 10 times per day you are invited to publish in one particular open access journal that is called predatory journals. They are trying to charge a fee to the authors. So it's important to be aware that and look for great quality open journals. So the last issue that we're going to talk is the main reasons to be rejected that could be extremely frustrating for all of us. First of all, there are, like Asdrubal already told to us, a couple of things that are very clear. If the paper don't have really good quality because have a wrong analysis, weak methodology, etc., make a lot of sense. But you need to understand there are another reasons that are important for all of you to keep in mind, that is editorial reasons. For instance, paper, like I told you, is out of our focus, of our mission. That is really important. You send a basic science paper to a practitioner of surgical techniques, doesn't work. If that paper is sent to another journal that is in process and we discover this kind of thing, of course, we automatically reject. If the quality of that is writing that journal, that paper, is not good enough, we're gonna reject as well, or don't follow ethics or the rules of the journal. So as a summarize to the end, Gisberto and their colleagues, Franziska, asked me for some tips for you to try to reduce the rejection rate. So first of all, select the right journal. Think in your mind, you know, which kind of paper do you want to publish, and look for the scope and the target audience of that journal. Follow always author guidelines. Like Asdrubal, probably Asdrubal is with a scissor. If you look the camera, he keep turn off the camera. So looks a little bit crazy, Asdrubal, but as Asdrubal says, follow all the author guidelines. Make a rigorous research. This is extremely important, as Asdrubal already says. Highlight why your paper is so important, have so good strengths. Write clearly and concisely, and could be a surprise for you, but I am not original from UK. When, as you can see from my English, I am kidding, of course, but most of us don't have English as a first language. So ask for native speaker of professional service. This make a good difference. Or perhaps Franziska can show to us these new AI tools that could help to us. Ask for help before submission. If you have someone like Asdrubal or Pedro Berjano or another big names worldwide, and you have access to these kind of persons, send your paper in advance. We can take a look very easy and give you some advice so this will be much more easy for you. And perhaps the most important are the two of them. Be persistent and resilient. Rejection is a common part of the publishing process. For instance, Global Spine Journal nowadays have a rejection rate of around 95%. 95. That means every 100 papers they send to us, we only approve between 5 to 10. So understand it and forget about journals like Nature's or New England Medicine of Journal have approbation rate of less than 100%. So be patient. So my last slide will be a take-home message. So again, try to choose the appropriate journal. That is extremely important. Of course, reputation and impact factor is extremely a good thing, but keep an open mind and try to better understand what it means, impact factor, and it's not all the important things. If you have the opportunity, go to an open access journal, especially if you want to go to a more worldwide audience, or try to ask for permission so you can distribute or upload your free version as an author. And there are multiple reasons for article rejection, but probably be humble and have patience will be the most important advice so I can give to you. Thank you for your time again. I am open if you have any questions, and I am here for you.
Thank you, Dr. Emmerich. So we have some questions from the chat. Does it make sense to put efforts in writing a paper on a small case series on a rare disease? For example, like 20 patients surgically treated for osteosarcoma of the spine. So what are your thoughts on this?
Absolutely. Perhaps osteosarcoma is not so rarely. It's not so frequent, but it's not so rarely. But 20, and in the other hand, 20 is not so small series. 20 cases of osteosarcoma is a good series. The important when you want to show a series is if you really have information that can add to the current knowledge of that topic, because that is another reason. We have plenty of really good papers to review. It's a really good paper, but don't add nothing new to the current knowledge. And that is one of the biggest reasons for rejection. If you're going to show the same information that we have in another 100 papers or 50 papers, at least that you're going to show something similar, but with 300,000 patients, that will become a new gold standard. But remember that, keep in mind, if there is nothing new, you have a higher chance that your paper will be rejected, no matter the number of the series, okay?
Okay, so what are the predatory journals and how to identify them? I think you have already answered in your presentation. And if the impact factor is not perfect, what other tool could I use to identify high quality journal?
Yeah, so predatory journals, I always make the same comment. It's going to happen to you a lot of times when my residents came really happy with a smile in his face and says, look, the editor of one journal asked me, they are looking for my papers and they encouraged me to write because they are close to the 2024 edition and they need 2 more papers. So I probably, and all of you, I receive, and you can talk with Asdrubal, I am not kidding, between 10 to 20 emails every day ask me for my researchers. And this is not because I am important, because they are looking. Never trust when you receive an email for a fancy name like Spine Journal Develop New Technology, okay? Open access, because they're going to say yes, but they're going to charge a fee for publishing, and could be 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 USA dollars. So be aware that is one of these. And the other more important is something that we call reputation. There are traditional journals, I say, besides impact factor, there are traditional journals that are really well followed for a lot of surgeons, but you need to keep something in mind. Impact factor used to be extremely important when journals was on paper. So if I am the leader of a library of a big hospital and I only have money for buy 3 or 4 journals, I only go to buy that 3 or 4 journals. That make a lot of sense. Nowadays, that you have access to all the journals, you need to look for journals, especially that are in your focus area of interest, and that are a long history with that field of knowledge. For instance, the top 10 of any field will be more than perfect. Don't matter too much if it's the number 1, the number 4, or the number 10. That will be more than perfect.
Okay, really happy to have you, and we'll keep following our webinar with Franziska.
Amazing. I am here.
Okay, so I am honored now to introduce Franziska Altorfer. We all know her because she is a really active member of and founder of our club. She comes from Switzerland, Balgris Clinic, and actually she is a researcher at Hospital for Special Surgery at the Spine Department. She is also attending an AI master degree at Cornell University, since she is obsessed with AI, and she is attending this degree in AI. And so welcome, Franziska. Please.
Hi, guys.
Go on.
Thank you so much for the previous talks, and I'm so happy to see that all of you dialed in. And yeah, I'd like to talk a little bit about artificial intelligence in research. So I have nothing and I have no conflict in interest so far. I just want to talk a little about the evolution of research paradigms. So first, we maybe remember from history lessons, it was epicrism, where all learning came from experiments. Then we switched to theory with Maxwell's equations, and then the first computer was available, not publicly, but created in 1946, which led in the long run to the data deluge, which means it's data. We have so much data that we cannot really work or really process. So now there is a new area called AI for science. It is today, it includes deep learning and AI acceleration. So I assume that all of you have tried an AI tool, most likely ChatGPT. And what is the real difference for you? Is it knowledge that you never had before? No. The difference this time is the keyword is speed. These tools change the speed of how we do things. And there are many tools. There are BBio ChatGPT, for example. I'm not sure if you heard of it, but that's ChatGPT trained by Microsoft based on 15 million PubMed abstracts. It's difficult to access. It has a lot of bugs, but it might become publicly available in a very short run. Then there's another tool called Connected Papers, where you can include in your research to find, okay, I like to quote this paper, where did it go, instead of just going through Google Scholar. And when you want to decide on what journal to use, you could either use Juan Emmerich, or you go to Journal Guide and see what kind of tool, what kind of journal will be useful for you. So you see, these are all considered AI tools, but what is AI? Well, we all heard about this topic and this big name, but we don't really know what it is. So AI is basically everything that can imitate human skills or intelligence. And there is a subsection called machine learning, which is a capability of technology to do and learn things that we did not teach step by step. So we just said, for example, I have an apple, I want you to make an apple pie, but I don't say use butter and oven and everything. We just say this is the input and this is the output. So the tool can develop different strategies of making this apple pie, as you might do as well. And one of these strategies is called deep learning. And deep learning is the neural network, the artificial neural network, connecting a lot of different technologies of machine learning. Obviously, as we have a lot of different brains too, there are also different brains in deep learning, for example, and this is the real revolution that has changed our application of AI tools in your daily life. It's called transformers. Transformers is the newest deep learning mechanism. It has been developed in 2017 by Google and Microsoft together. And in this group of deep learning algorithms, all these large language models such as ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude fall into. So as you can see, AI is a big term, and not everything that is AI is machine learning, but it can be. So we want to understand these large language models a little better. So if I ask ChatGPT a question, so a prompt, it goes to this tool that has been trained on a huge data set of in case of ChatGPT, 43 terabytes of text, and has gone through this transformer and taught this transformer of how to generate a response to my question. So keep in mind, this training data is always retrospective, and it has been pooled and trained then. It's not continuously trained on the same, on a growing pool. It has to be retrained all over again. So what does this transformer do? So I want to say, as my output, spine surgeons from all over the world love AOSYC. So obviously there are different word groups included in this. So this is pretty basic, so we understand that. But if we want to have a proper sentence and meaning, we obviously have to know the numbers in this sentence. So where does each section appear? Is it in the front or is it the last section? But still, this will not probably give the best answer to my question. So the real innovation of these transformers is this capability of called attention. Attention means that the tool can decide or interact with the prompt you asked and the answer it wants to give. So it can go back and forth and decide how to respond to you. And this will give you the response you're giving in your AI tool. So why is this important? Let's look at Claude. It's my favorite large language model currently. And I want to ask it, how should I treat lumbar spondylolisthesis? And we all have asked ChatGPT about this kind of questions. And Claude can give you a maybe real scientific reference that also explains a little what's in there. So as you can see, I asked some specific questions and it gives me an order of specific words that might be probably the most likely response to my question based on this attention. So, well, this leads us to the next question. Can I just copy paste this response to my paper and say, well, it's great, the AI tool gave it to me? Well, this is the first challenge of AI tools right now. It's called validation. It's not only for large language models, it's for every AI tool. So we have this reference, but do we know it's real? Well, we can validate pretty easily. We just go to PubMed and check, oh, wow, it really does exist. So this is great. But then still, I'm like, is this the best reference I can get? Dr. Falavigna would not be happy because we see it's from 2008, so it's a lot longer than 5 years ago, but it's the only reference I got for my, for example, introduction. So we see, might be not the best or the newest study. Okay, but maybe it's just a very good study, and this is the study I want to go for. That's why the tool decided on it. Well, it's just a review. It's not a randomized controlled trial where we say, okay, this is a really good study. So I wonder, why is this tool giving this reference to me as the reference for my question? Well, it has been cited almost 300 times. So this is very important to understand. The tool is not, as we human, scrolling through a library digitally and saying, okay, this might be the best match for your question. No, it's just checking in his database what's the most likely word to come after the word before, leading up to a reference that has to be older, so it had time to be distributed in this data set, that has to be quoted several times, so it's often in your data set, and it has to be published in the time frame where your data set has been trained on. So if I publish maybe the groundbreaking study on this topic in the New England Journal, it will not appear here. So this leads us to our next challenge, intellectual property. So this is a topic that has a paper that has been published publicly and is accessible. But what is if, for example, you can now upload a document to ChatGPT or any other tool? What happens with this document? Well, actually, we don't know. Every AI tool has different guidelines, rules. It's very transparent or intransparent what happens with the information you upload there. So if you upload an unpublished manuscript to these AI tools, it might become part of the database. And then at a certain time point, it's very difficult to say, well, what was first? Did you take it from the database? You haven't published it. Or is it mine? And the database has been trained based on that. So how can I prove it is my property? Well, this is also a problem, for example, for images. When we think of maybe we have some people that do medical art and it's published there, but the copyright belongs to them. Well, we don't know what happens. Of course, there is an AI tool to solve or address this question. It's called Have I Been Trained? So you can ask in this AI tool if your name has been trained. And I checked for Juan and I saw that his probably his paper, Neurosurgical Approaches, has been used to train an AI tool. I assume he did not give consent personally for that, but it has been used to train. So with this evidence, you could sue the AI company that trained their tool with that. So that is another difficult challenge to address intellectual property. And also, we all trust these tools. We are super excited. We believe they are smarter than us because they have a more fancy name than we do. So I want to show you this paper that has been published in a high impact journal. And I just want to quickly let you read the first sentence of the introduction. So all ChatGPT users will definitely understand that this author never ever read the introduction and probably has not written it himself, but just copy pasted it from an AI tool. And obviously he did that because, or her, because they thought this tool is smarter than I am and I don't have to double check. A similar case has been shown in a journal for shoulder surgery where they published a super nice AI-generated image, but every shoulder surgeon would probably tell his resident, please go back if you think the tibia ends up in the shoulder joint, or if you do a sonography and the baby appears in there. So again, the humans trusted the AI technology blindly. So this is my maybe most important takeaway. I'd like to quote Steve Jobs on that. Technology is nothing. What is important is that you have faith in people, that you're basically good and smart, and if you give them tools, they'll do wonderful things with them. But tools are just tools. Tools either work or they don't. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Franziska, for the really interesting talk. I have a question for you. You showed us how AI tools select citation, for example, articles, and mostly based on citation and number of the article being cited. That just gives me the idea that there will be some articles that will be always cited more and more just because they're getting number of citation, and others may be very good articles that will fall behind because they're not cited. So it will create a loop of citation on specific articles, even if they are outdated, for example. Is this a risk?
Well, we see that in, for example, fake news. It's not science, but we all know that fake news spread a lot easier because in other algorithms, they just fit the need of people. So they get distributed more and more. So it becomes more difficult to say what is fake and what is real, especially when the fake grows so much faster. So of course, this is a bias, we can say. Now this quotation is not fake, but in the end, it's just based on a data set. And if this data set, we call it garbage in, garbage out, if it's not perfectly trained, it will only produce the unperfect result that has been trained on his unperfect setup. So that is why we humans, and this is a human skill, we are very, very challenged in this way, because now we cannot trust the tool blindly. It's great that they speed up things for us, but we will be even more asked to think critically and validate for ourselves, because this is what the tool cannot do. It cannot validate a human opinion on this kind of questions.
Okay, so thank you very much. So, what about tools that now identify AI written content does that cause problems in acceptance for publications?
Well, that's a good question. I am not an editor, but AI written content is not always a fraud, because there again comes the question about the intellectual property. If I upload something on ChatGPT and say, please rephrase it, it's still my thought, it's just translated nicely. And if I translate it, it's my thought, but it's not a problem with publishing. So it depends a lot who created the thought, which might be challenging to differentiate. But right now, maybe Juan, you can say something on that. It's not the biggest issue.
Yeah. We have a similar conversation with Franziska a couple of weeks ago. If we are using EA as a co-pilot, that is, I believe, is a really good tool. You know, you says, well, I need to. I put as example with Franziska the other day, when I need to write a recommendation letter, I asked to GPT, but I asked it in a different way. Say, ChatGPT, I need to prepare a recommendation letter for Juan Silva, who is a Brazilian surgeon, and go to apply to a new job. Ask me 10 questions about Juan, so you can have a better information about him, and you can write that recommendation letter. I interact with the robot, and finally I have a product. But that was ChatGPT, was Juan with the help of ChatGPT. I believe if we use this to help to improve our production, that at the end of the road, that is what a computer or a calculator made, okay? It's fine. But if you are going to put all the energy and all your effort in that robot, of course, it's not an original work, and that is something that we are looking for. And now we have technology that allows to us. If a red light says that 100% is made by the EA and the paper is good, we're probably going to reach the author and ask for an explanation, because explanation could be English is not the first language and they use a technology to improve the writing, no? And could be.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you to the speakers. It has been amazing. Our first experience on our first webinar, I think, has been really interesting. We are running a bit late. So thank you, Juan. Thank you, Franziska. Thank you, Dr. Falavigna, Asdrubal. And what else to say? See you next time.
Gisberto,
Yeah.
Before you leave, I want to really congratulations not only to the task force or the leader, but to all of this group. We are struggling and we are looking for a young generation to be involved, and we are extremely proud of the work of you are looking for. In 3-4 weeks, all of us, well, not all of us, most of us will be in Bangkok, in the Global Spine Congress in Bangkok. Please, if you look me in the corridor to me or to Asdrubal, please introduce yourself. We want to know you. We want to give support you. We love this idea. This is idea that came from Europe with Pedro Barjano and Ricardo Cecinato, and is working extremely well. And we are really proud of the good things you are doing. So please, if there is something that we can do to help you, please let us know. But you are doing a tremendous job. And Asdrubal, myself, and all the leaders of this organization are really proud of the amazing things that you are doing. Congratulations, and please keep doing this hard work. The best is in the close future.
Thank you so much, guys. Share our experience. Let us know if we can improve what you like, what we should do better next time. We're happy and eager to learn, and we're so grateful that all of you joined. And yeah, keep on pushing.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.